Hi everyone. We're not starting just yet. I feel like a couple more people are gonna come. Just saying hello. No. It's not a complaint. I was just wondering if you wanted to.
No, scientifically, no, I have no idea.
Okay. Don't worry about it. I don't know.
Okay, just making sure.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
I know this
You can fix it.
I'm responsible for everything else. Okay. Oh, really? Just drop it out? Okay. All right. Hello. Welcome to the November Holly Writers House Speakeasy. This is the third one of the semester, not counting our little NSO one. So we're off to a good start, and then we have just one left in December, which will be great. This speakeasy is super special because it's co-hosted by Equilibria. I'm going to let my co-host say a few words about that.
Hello everyone. Hello, my name is Fatima. I am social chair of Equilibria, an arts magazine led by students on campus. Basically for our spring edition, because our winter one is closed, but if you wanted to start thinking about our next edition, you basically submit work, either art or writing, and if you get chosen, you get paired with another person, and then you switch the art you originally had submitted and make something inspired by what you got, and then it just gets published at the end with a magazine in total. But yeah, it should come out in a few, like next semester, the information about that. And just look out on our Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing. But thank you guys for showing, and I may or may not read today, depending on my level of warmth and anxiety, but I'll tell y'all. Thank you.
All right, can I grab the sign-up sheet? Can someone grab the sign-up? Thank you. And yeah, just a little, everybody knows the deal. Poetry, prose, anything goes. You can read whatever you want. There aren't a lot of people here tonight, so there isn't really a time cap, but don't be like gratuitous. You don't need like 45 minutes of information. And just if there's anything in your content that you think deserves a little content warning, something that could upset or trigger people, just say a little something beforehand so people know how to take care of themselves and each other. And to start us off this evening, we have the Puppet Master.
Video. so I'm reading this off my computer. But
No problem.
this is a story that I've been working on for a little while now. Incomplete, but here it is. Over the course of a difficult year, Oscar had managed to wriggle his way out of the crowded shared workspace and settle for a much more private room, one which he shared with the senior executive assistant. Keyword senior. Not to say that Oscar was ungrateful for his role as your typical EA, but that bump in pay wouldn't have hurt. He certainly wasn't pleased with the man who had stolen that slightly more polished and sought-after desk right from under him. Although the two shared a workspace, conversation was almost non-existent, the most they shared being a sheepish nod when holding the door open when they happened to cross paths. Oscar chalked it up to the man being a bore, too uninteresting to hold his own, or possibly embarrassed under the circumstances of how he got the job in the first place. In turn, they made an effort to stay out of each other's way. Oscar was well aware of how the game worked when he arrived at the company. You walk into the office with your head down, your mouth shut, and your arms at the ready to make tedious coffee runs full of pretentiously complex orders. You learn to memorize your higher-ups' usual, to scribble down names of special syrups and spices you can barely pronounce, and most importantly, you don't step out of line. Then one day you're promoted, and this process repeats, except instead of coffee, it's whatever other arduous tasks get passed down the hieratic scale to your inexperienced hands. Anyone who's played the game could tell you that. You pay your dues, and one day you become a real-life someone. Oscar wasn't much of a people person, but he did have a few acquaintances in the office he traded mindless chatter with during their lunch break. Though he wasn't partial to small talk, he did find an interest in keeping tabs on his peers to make sure that he wasn't being lowballed or stepped over by someone less deserving than he. So he put his pride aside and dished out made-up details about his weekend getaway with his wife while he left his sons at home with his sister. He didn't have a sister or sons for that matter, and how they reserved the penthouse at the spa resort to relive their glory days. The picture he painted was one that he hoped would become reality one day, a future where he had obtained all of the missing pieces that make a person great. Oscar's co-workers never doubted him for a second, likely because of the unchanging expression adorning that tough exterior. Or maybe it was because these stories were so deeply rooted that they almost felt real to him too. In exchange, his co-workers offered the keys to their own lives, both in and out of the company. They too shared tales of first steps of daughters and newly purchased cars, of which they would insist on taking him for a test ride and then never follow through on what seemed like such fervent ingenuity. More importantly, they discussed the inner workings of the office, who was impressing, who wasn't, who was on the outs, and who was close to making a breakthrough to the next level of competition. He figured that it was best to keep the people around him close. After all, knowledge was the only way to stay above the fray, to secure himself as next in line for promotion. If Mason from 3 desks down was looking a little too appealing, Oscar might have to remove the little sticky note on his computer reminding him about an upcoming deadline. If Aubrey was getting more buddy-buddy with her higher-up than he would have liked, Oscar might just slip the boss's clearly labeled Tupperware, "Do not touch, J. Murphy's lunch," onto her desk. He figured that if this whole thing really were a game, it wouldn't hurt to give himself an advantage in any way he could. May the best man win and all that. And for a while, Oscar was winning the game. He hadn't been caught by his coworkers, though that was no mistake, as he was very careful to leave no trace with his little tricks. Things were going his way. That is, until Simon Booker joined the team. At the time, Oscar was merely a small fish in the world of Voyager's apparel, having finally ascended from the role of coffee fetcher, as a few in the office had joked. Oscar had no reason to take a second glance at the newcomer, knowing that he had seniority over interns, even if just by a single peg in the poll. But as the months passed, Oscar noticed a rumbling in the office, whispers of rumors that the boss had taken a special interest in Booker. His desk neighbor, Janet, had mentioned that he was the son of a well-connected man, giving him that little glowy halo that seemed to be attracting the higher-ups. That was enough to set Oscar off. While he was not opposed to giving himself a leg up through what others would perceive as morally gray methods, Booker was cheating the system entirely. It didn't take craft or planning or any kind of grace to maneuver his way through the ranks of the company. No, this was something else, something that none of Oscar's ploys could have awarded him. But through the achievement of his father, it was decided that Booker was to be the exception. It may have been just that that let Oscar justify his strategic deceptions of both peers and mentors to himself. Although it did take time for Booker to catch up with Oscar, the day arrived in which both men were EAs ready to make their climb to the next step. And Oscar never stood a chance against him, really, whether he wished to admit it or not. And maybe Oscar would have found a way to forget about this lapse in his boss's judgment if it weren't for their shared office, which only amplified the assumption that he was the second best option in their eyes. So pitifully close to his goal, yet he had fallen slightly short of the target. A constant reminder of the mental incognizance he would be forced to put up with until further notice. Booker, a man who Oscar still saw as a sniveling office aide with no sense of direction, and whose glimmering, overly hopeful eyes were far too naive to make it in the corporate world. He had passed him up in skill, according to his superior. If it was up to who could sell the most jackets to a happy-go-lucky group of schmucks taking their families on planned-out trips of hikes far too advanced for them to handle, Oscar was sure that he would be proven worthier than Booker. But, unfortunately, that's not how things worked. Your efficiency and skill level didn't automatically relate to a promotion. No, with the dozens of other competitors, you could be sure that while you know they're incompetent idiots barely capable of taking out the trash, your higher-ups aren't always as tuned in. And fuck-ups happen. In this case, a major, probably money-costing one, in the form of Booker's raise to senior executive assistant. Although Oscar's own title lacked this crowning badge, he was confident that as soon as old Booker made a few too many missteps in a row, following his most recent screw-up of the boss's schedule, he'd have a fair shot at taking his job. Whether they were truly Booker's fault or not didn't particularly matter. Oscar often found himself wondering what his next move would be, delicately mulling over the ways in which he'd slip Booker a rotten hand when he'd least expect it. These thoughts became especially intrusive during lunch breaks. Booker had taken it upon himself to join the other co-workers outside of the office kitchen, nudging himself between Janet and Robert and splaying sweaty palms against the table like he owned the place, which, with his network, he may as well have. As much as Oscar saw his co-workers as competition, Janet was the only one he felt as though he connected with. Among icy attitudes not unlike his own, she was quick to offer an uncommon show of support, and somehow found the time to check in on him every now and again. She reminded him much of his wife, someone with that kind urge that ran deep. Maybe that made him biased in his silent promise never to use his strategic tricks to knock her down. Booker, on the other hand, was a different story. Having Booker insert himself into their already established circle set him on edge. Nobody else seemed to mind his presence, engaging in the usual nonsense and welcoming him as if he hadn't leapfrogged over each and every one of them to get to his current position. It was odd, though, the way Booker conducted himself. So willing to set himself down in the middle of things, yet so reluctant to speak with the rest of the group. Something about that rubbed Oscar the wrong way, as if he thought he was above the rest of them. He wasn't a peer, but some kind of overseer. He gathered that Booker's reserve was almost definitely intentional. At the end of the day, it's only standard to be friendly with your boss, but not really be their friend. Although their physical proximity was much closer than he would have liked, Booker's undeniable emotional distance allowed Oscar to see him as a mere pawn, entirely dissociating himself from the guilt as he set the man up to be captured. It was, after all, for the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellie. We never get prose. We usually get like poems, and that was a fun, refreshing thing.
It really was.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
Next up, we have to know.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna doggy bag your mic.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you know where I'm at?
Hey guys, I was here last month and it was really nice, so I decided to come back this month. What I did was, it streams. Last month, Speakeasy streamed on YouTube when I got it, because I didn't see it the whole time last time, not seeing the whole time this time. I got a chance to look at what I missed prior and what I missed after, the whole performance, and that was really nice. So better. I write spoken word pieces, and it doesn't have a title. And you're gonna have to bear with me, I believe, a little bit. But I'm gonna try my best. It's a nice work, I think. So just bear with me. No, bear with me. It starts. And then close. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
You just got this one, right? I'm thinking, right?
Yes, the right
This is my thing.
Sorry, you're bad.
Okay, it starts as such. Fake and phony tears running down your face, cheek to cheek, the intimate way is no longer the way. God is far away, and he's to blame for your misogynistic ways. The devil is shunning people for being human, when human is in our character. Treating people as minions, subordinate, and underneath. It's not in the character of God. When will we wake up and realize and put God first? Thirst and drink from his well. Thirst and drink of his righteousness. Thirst and drink of what's right. Come to his altar with no shame or inhibitions. For his burdens and yoke are light. Study and show yourself self-approved of your own inhibitions, not of a mystical or fabricated solution. Resolution is in truth. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. I'm sure it was lovely. Sorry.
Thank you, guys.
Next up, we have Jack.
Hi everyone. My phone's at 8%, so I hope it doesn't die. This is something that is not finished, and I hope to make it finished soon. I'm leaving handprints on icy windows, where an orange streak of morning greets me when I'm composing hallucinations. When dozing, my fingers print out the melody, frost and crackle like green leather, my cradle, my reminder that like so many things, we've been here before. I don't have a single lucid memory on the school bus. I've been tumbling out of those mumbling 3 steps for 15 years. I can't hardly take 3 steps without blinking out my peers, returning to my wheel well. That invisible floor corner, back left, jet black and Russian, yellow mist of every street lamp evidencing its existence, but me, school buses are where I went to fall into the jetting. The endless destination, yellow mist. There's something about finality that feels dishonest. Like words with 2 sides. Like floorboards. Like dinner plates. Like bridges. Like so many things we've been here before. I am intimate with one-sided stories like handprints on glass. Weary chatter in your shoulders when I see you look what I too carry. School buses where I went to fall into crevices because somebody told me to retrace my story, but I am what I write. That's not quite honest. School buses are where I went to remember. I wrote my laughter over pothole rhythms. You look startled. For 15 years, the sun only rose over sheet metal. We grew up on the transient rumble of where we've been. You look startled. Somebody told you to write your own story, but you already creak with ancestral malfunction, but that's not quite honest. Somebody told me what the loudest part of me was. Who do I sound like? A friend told me it's both. School buses are where I went home. Like so many things.
That was lovely. Thank you, Jack.
That was nice. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Popstar. Yeah, there's one in the back. If you want to wait for
Okay. This is also a poem which also does not have a title, but I wrote it like a few months back, and I've yet to edit it, but I wanted to share it today. It is unfair. When I see the moon, the first thought is seeing it with you. And if you're not here, it is unfair that my first thought is telling you of its red hue. It is unfair that its circle is missing a slight slit and its gray is barely a blue. Unfair that the clouds make no shape in its face, but surround it like a pew. It is unfair that it is so small from here, but takes enough space for two. It is extremely unfair that its white sits so clean on a geometric surface in blue. Unfair how when I see it, I always must immediately think of you. Unfair that a few nights in the sand, the moon takes your place like a tomb. But it's unfair as well that you don't remember to ask me if there's a beauty I knew. It is unfair that its clouds slowly drift away and take the red hue. It is undoubtedly unfair that its gray is barely now in view. Unfair that you aren't here, but seem to be all I see on a night so new. But it is mostly unfair that you don't remember me the same. That it takes a whole night of a moon's awe and its complemented breeze to know that I'm sane. And as the morning blinds my thoughts and leaves my head hung in shame, now it is only fair for me to leave the sun for you to see. And I hope now you stare in awe enough to forget all the beauty you ever saw in me. Thank you.
Yay, thank you. Will that be in this edition of Equilibria coming out soon?
Maybe.
Perhaps. Maybe pick one up and see. Next up we have Sydney.
Hi, you guys. I wrote this poem a few weeks ago. It's called On Becoming a Wall. Have you ever, while walking, with your head in the clouds or your eyes on the ground and your feelings dragging behind you, maybe run your fingers along the wall? Out of wonder, just to feel the incredulity of the world next to you. Out of curiosity, does the brick scratch your fingertips, or is it reluctantly smooth? Out of kinship? Tell me, have you ever wanted, from your heart to your hand, to touch that wall and feel your skin sink in? Let the warm heart scratches envelop you? Tell me what it's like to be a wall. Tell me how the denseness compresses your body, pressing, pressing, pressing the cold saltiness out of your mouth, leaving only a mobile, ambivalent warmth, an absence of choice, an absence of thought. Because walls have a predestined purpose, you see, as I'm sure you know from experience. They give support to some structure, some place that people make part of themselves. A stage for a treasured memory, or a sanctuary from something rather forgotten. Walls watch being alive become living, hold the palleted painted feelings of their charges until they can be absorbed by the same, making someone a little different from before. And isn't that all you want? Isn't that why you do it? Feeling the purpose of support and the fulfillment of change? Or do you secretly do it to give up your heavy, heavy humanity? Just 1 second, I will not be back. Tell me what it's like, because every time I try, every time I press against that wall with my whole willful being, it doesn't let me in. I'm still here.
Thank you, Sydney. Super like yellow wallpaper-esque. I don't know, yeah. Very shoulder in the groove. Next up we have Gabby.
Hi, this is a poem called Perfectionist's Manifesto. To this there is no end, to that I make my concession. I could wake up to the spit of the first sun ray. I could sleep and lie and dream into the twilight. It would be of no matter. Questioning the winds has never done me well. I follow them to the ends of the earth, grab a leaf like a butterfly, and wave its soggy green flag to passing squirrels. I search for decades, but only find more caves and cliffs. Now I devote myself to chance. If I sculpt a statue, I decorate it with dandelions. If I paint a rose, you might barely see it. I lobby myself into unthinking, sift through time like a newborn swan. I want more snow than snow can throw, more lilacs than lilacs can grow. I want the awe to the color and the savor of the smell. I want that fuller version, polished, fine-tuned, illustrated. I want you to fill every abyss like a flooded vase. I want one that does not exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. At risk of saying this again and making sure she never returns to a speakeasy, just a reminder, we went to high school together. Next up we have Gabs.
Were you fast for this? Oh, yeah. Is that okay? Okay. Sorry. No, you're good. You're good. I was stuck between two poems that I want to share, so I think I'll read them both. Okay. First one, I'm going to give a shout out to Body Electric Club. They helped me reconfigure this poem, and it's called Eat Me, Drink Me. I shouldn't go down this hole, but I always fall down this hole. And on my way down, I see myself 1,000 times over, refracted and distorted, until my face is not my face, and I know not what I am. My name is but a word, erasable, my face forever changeable. I can paint on a new one again and again, or I can take it all off for you to see. No matter if I run so far or stand so still, I'm a malleable glass for you to fill. Then I'm told that I'm my own. But the thought terrifies me because it reminds me of how empty I am. I have options to wear or not to wear, to dress up, dress down, marry for love, marry a clown, or not at all. Then the new voices come pouring in. Get out of the house and go to work. You're purposeless without a profession. My mama's life role has turned into a concession. Confession, I still listen to whoever holds the secret to slimmer stomach and thinner thighs. But all bodies are beautiful. You don't need makeup, just Photoshop. You don't need skin cream, just reconstructive surgery. I hate being short, 5'4", 5'3". I hate being tall, since finding love ain't easy. I hate being flat-chested. I hate being full-breasted. I hate bearing the weight of your judgment on my back. But behind my back, I hear them whisper. I'll fill the room if you want me to, or I can shrink till my lungs nearly burst. Tell me to grow louder, and I'll never be quiet. Tell me to stop screaming, and I'll never stop apologizing for making noise in the first place. I'll be whatever you want me to be. Call me baby cakes, call me sugar poo, call me dandelion, call me Malibu. I'll be so sweet you could just eat me up. Eat me, I beg. Lying like a stale cake atop your dinner plate. Drink me, I whisper. I'll be your magic potion in my hourglass capsule, timeless. I'm a clock with your hands all over. We can turn back time if we want. Move my arms back around where you want them. I'm your baby cake sweetie pie sugar high. Eat me up. This is a poem I wrote a couple months ago. It's called Kayla. There was this girl who went to my high school, found dead in a motel room. He survived, but she didn't. She made sure that she didn't. When guidance came to inform us of her loss, they refused to say her name out of fear of glorifying suicide. Instead, they discussed the importance of mindfulness while shoving exams and expectations down our throats. They don't want us to think about killing ourselves, they claimed, out of fear of repeating a local suicide epidemic at the next school over. It was game over for over 10 kids. They don't want us to think about killing ourselves.
then why is it that every story they feed us reads the same? A martyrized demise, perpetuated lies of death being glorified. Try not to cry, they say for the millionth time. Feast your eyes upon Romeo and Juliet, who had not one regret ending the story and being famed by glory and death. Romance, by nature, is a tragedy, and such hypocrisy it is to live and speak unfaithfully as we do, us sinners. Is there even a purpose to leaving behind our 13 reasons why, knowing that we're all just come here to die? We envy zealous sacrifice from Socrates to Jesus Christ, who didn't have to, yet suffered and died for all of us sinners. We're all unworthy. We all should have died, not him. So guilt is what they preach, and guilt is what we breathe. Every romanticized parable of worthlessness and pain, we're taught that it's a shame to ever do anything for personal gain if you desire your selfish and vain. We all just die, or so it goes. In the poet's prose, that sleeps a rose, a sweet repose, and death is sleep, so beauty stays froze, and death's quiet keep. Lush lips, slightly parted, whispering woes long forgotten. Our woe-begotten spirit, supple skin turns rotten. Woes upon the flower shells, Ophelia's sheds one by one. He loves me not. If thy love be true, by death's hand due. So drown me when I'm young and beautiful. Drown me in my sleeping gown. Frame my picture on the wall and save me from my burial ground. Save me is what I think she begged the night of her untimely fall. So sad and heavy life can be. I don't blame her for craving death's call. I understand their insensitivity. I understand the danger of dignifying the dead. How bad thoughts travel through teenage heads wishing they were dead. Trust me, I know. But to not even say her name, it gives me physical pain to think our leaders are that afraid yet unashamed of the blatant discrepancy between what they preach and actually teach. Her name was Kayla, and she was human too.
Thank you, Gabs. Next up, we have Emma.
Hi. This is a short story that I wrote last week. I'm in a fiction writing workshop. And here it is. It's called First Snow. Daniel had been at the hospice for a week and a half when it started to snow, the first snow of the season. I sat next to his bed as he watched the fat flakes spiraling down from the sky. And before long, the meager patch of brown grass outside his window was blanketed in white. "Do you want anything? Water?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. I couldn't tell if he minded my presence. If he did, he didn't let it show. Instead, he simply laid there, his eyes focused on some distant point in the horizon, tracking the sun as it began to make its descent from the sky. We'd been paired together because my supervisor thought that Daniel would relate to me more than the female nurses. I hadn't found much success. So far, our bonding had occurred over a series of competitive games of Xbox. Daniel liked video games, sports, and action movies like The Dark Knight. When I went to Cindy, the head nurse, with my concerns, certainly not for the first or last time, she told me in her slow southern accent that everything was perfectly fine. I marveled at how she could say that in a place like this, but she'd been here for 25 years, so I guess she knew better. Daniel didn't want to talk about much else outside of sacrificial death in sports. He especially chafed against my attempts to bring up religion, and I didn't blame him. I remember how I'd been at his age, awkward and pimply, an alien in my newly elongated body, filled with an odd mix of malaise and aggression that was directed towards both no one and everyone. I had been 15 when I was expelled from high school. I had a bad habit of getting into fights after everything happened with my brother Ben. Daniel had left school at 15 too, but because of his terminal cancer diagnosis. 2 years and 3 surgeries later, the cancer was still there. I unlocked my phone and my missed call log read like a chastisement. I'd been avoiding my mother's calls all week. She knew things weren't easy for me around this time of year. A sharp knock at the door rescued me from my thoughts. When I answered, I wasn't surprised by the face behind it. Max, Daniel's best friend, came to sit with him every day from 3:30 p.m. until 7, which was when Daniel's mother picked up his siblings, did the grocery shopping, and all the other menial activities that couldn't get done in the hospice. "Hi, Toby. How are you doing today?" He said this to me, like always, with a grin, before shouldering past me to give Daniel an elaborate handshake, apparently a ritual from their childhood. He had the unguarded confidence of a teenage boy who'd always been liked by his peers. He was short and a smooth talker, and probably a good kid. But I was wary of Max. He had come to me a week ago and told me that he'd arranged for a prostitute to meet Daniel just outside of the hospital. Like every teenage boy, Daniel wanted to lose his virginity, but the circumstances of his cancer had complicated his efforts. Max had told me with the straight face and seriousness of a judge delivering a verdict that he wanted my help with the scheme. I was asked to keep watch over the room while Max took him to meet the prostitute, but I hadn't agreed. I kept telling myself that I'd think about it when I got off work, but I spent my time off work desperately trying not to think. I'd hoped they would forget about it. Toby, do you think we could take that walk today? The one we talked about a couple of weeks ago? I turned to see that Max had taken my seat. Behind him, Daniel smiled wanly. I frowned, unsure of what to say to their request. I'm not sure. They just looked at me. Daniel coughed once, then twice. It sounded wet. It was hard to look at him, but I kept my eyes trained on his sunken face. He deserved that much, at least. I knew how illness repulses, and how the sixth sense repulsion, and how recognition of that repulsion is another death in and of itself. But it was hard to look, because he reminded me so much of my brother Ben. Okay, just give me a second to make a quick phone call, okay? I said, trying to sound like I still had some semblance of authority. Max nodded, and Daniel went back to watching the snow. It was coming down more quickly now, in flurries. I left Daniel's room, like always, feeling inadequate and unqualified. I sat down in an uncomfortable plastic chair by the window, and I watched the snow collect on the tops of the cars in the parking lot, and I turned over Max's proposition in my mind. I thought about how I was both the youngest member of the hospice staff and the only male employee. I was a joke, and everyone knew it, and now they were asking me to facilitate a terminally ill kid's access to a prostitute. I called my mother, and she picked up on the second ring. Toby, hi, it's Mom. Her voice sounded tired through the speaker. I know, I called you. Yes, of course, how are you? I'm okay. You haven't called in a while. I was worried about you. I mean, I'm always worried with you being so far away, but would you book a ticket home for Christmas, please? I have work on Christmas. Of course, I don't know what I thought. I've been thinking about Ben a lot. Oh, me too. It's this time of year. I don't know where the last 12 years went. I didn't respond, and the pause stretched into silence. I couldn't think of anything to say that wouldn't feel trite or like a line from a poorly written movie. In the end, it was my mom who spoke again. I love you. Call me when you get off from work, please. I will. I know. Okay, Mom, I gotta go. I hung up before I could even hear her say goodbye. Outside the window, the snow was coming down even faster. I watched the snow fall and thought about if I'd help the boys and wondered what Ben would tell me to do. Ben had always been the more outgoing of us, the one with a quick smile, capable of charming everyone from the grocery clerk to our principal, and he was good to me. When I'd left my fly down one day during recess in elementary school and gotten teased during kickball, Ben was the one who would punch the bully in the face. He'd hug me before he wiped the kid's blood off his hands. Every time I got into a fight after his death, I'd hoped that maybe I was repaying him somehow. I knew it didn't make sense. When I got back to the room, Daniel and Max were gone. I was too late. I looked around the room with panic in my eyes, but then I heard the toilet flush. The door to the restroom opened, and Max helped Daniel out, then back into the bed. Max looked at me, saw the lingering alarm in my eyes, and shook his head subtly. I was worried you had both left, I said. He just threw up. I think he has a fever too, Max said quietly. I just stood there dumbly, looking at Max, who looked out the window at the snow, anywhere but at Daniel. And so I took a seat next to Max on the couch. Daniel turned on the football game but dozed off quietly. He was so tired that he couldn't watch television. He wasn't going anywhere, not to meet a prostitute. His mother arrived and Max stayed and none of us spoke. They all just wanted to watch Daniel while they could. I watched as Max reached out to take Daniel's hand. I remember holding Ben's hand in those last moments. I looked away. The snow is still coming down, white flakes shining underneath the streetlights, thrown into contrast against the darkness of the night. I knew that in a week the snow would melt to slush and then evaporate so that there was no trace of the storm. I wondered if Daniel would be there to see the patch of grass outside his window reemerge.
Right, thank you very much. That's all we have on the list. So I'm going to take a moment to say I was mistaken earlier. We do not have a Speakeasy next month. So short of anybody wanting to go again right now, I'll see. Oh, hell yeah.
Woo-woo. Hi. I wrote this poem this weekend for my friend who fell in love with a boy over quarantine online, and it's called Landlocked. I hope you know The pixels cannot capture you. The screen attempts a crude retelling of dimples like M&Ms and edges like Art Nouveau. I hope you know how hard I've tried to tenderly tug your form to mine, to lift your chin up to the light, to hold you through the phone. One day I'll know the parts the camera cannot catch, the yearning at the nape of your neck, the sympathy at the center of your palms, the secrets your whispers disclose. And when we meet, I will speak gracelessly, pleated to the shape of airplane seats. My heart, a rag wrung out, will fold into yours at our first hello.
That was great. I think you didn't sign up. Yes, I see you with bangs in the back. Come on.
My name is Lila, and this is Mine Travels at Dawn. I can't remember if I've slept tonight. Maybe that's for the better, so I can tell myself I have. I'm not going on 48 hours kind of tired. That's just how I always am. I'm tired. It's better, probably, to tell myself that I'm just tired because that's how I am. Excusable fatigue in the absence of motivation. It's still dark in the thick pudding way that we recently midnight mornings are. The truckers, though, that drive produce to the cafes and bodegas and fruit stands and grocery conglomerates have already begun to arrive in the city. They walk like ghost ants, gray and hazy under soft street lights in the barely glow of my lamp 5 floors above. It's warm already. I open the window and let the pre-dawn envelop the room almost instantly. Like a warm cream, humid and curling the hairs at the nape of my neck playfully. I always feel raw after these sleepless nights. The mind rambles uncaringly through the soul it shares a body with. I'm shaky at dawn, having been racked, flogged, openly and unabashedly by my thoughts through the whole sweating darkness of summer nighttime. I get up and sit at the table, which I've drawn close to the window so I can watch the undead trucker bug people skittle across the street with boxes of peaches and crates of eggs and milk and bread and everything good and fresh. Back and forth, diligent, sweet almost. I feel a little less raw. The restless night version of myself does a pretty impressive job of filleting my insides out, leave me wet and ragged and wide open for the ceiling fan to do lazy, drunken loops over. This insomniac surgery is done with a dull knife, the sadistically blunt edge of a mind out for its own blood and glorious violent death. But then morning comes, and there's not much an open window on a warm navy-skied morning can't solve. Its air goes thick like fresh yogurt, real yogurt, not the American kind, down my throat and swells in my lungs, rich and smooth and deep. It always surprises me how quickly I can feel better. The sunrise teases its way behind the buildings, and I let it have its flirtatious way with me, slurping back the last bits of navy in grateful gulps, letting it drip like a good nectarine down my chin. The sky becomes lighter now, a thinner grayish purple. I am sticky and warm, a little salty where my curls meet that skin. The workers have paused to chat. One has brought coffee. I smile. There is another hour probably before the truckmen and I will have to share the day with the rest of the city, before the hustle and bustle chokes out my friend-worn navy. I won't lament when daylight unfurls her decisive and inevitable win, but I will savor the heavy, muffled universe holding me right now. Dawn, dark and wide and slow like honey. She loves me. I love her with all my serrated soul. She's already softened and made smooth white scars of me. See how quickly I feel better. I always do. I always do. I smile at the notion of that I could return to calm, that I could always feel better. That's more than enough to live on. I pull the pages of last night's failed story across the table. I sit for a second, lean over, crack my back. I flip the pages over, pick a pen up off the ground, and begin to write the Navy warning.
Thank you. All right. Okay, check this out. Okay, I'm going to call this one. Thank you all for coming out. Oh, wait, did you want to go?
I was going to.
Okay, no, it's fine. You can do one more. Come on. give you 2 more.
Maybe.
Okay, I wrote this a while back. I kind of wanted to like fulfill my inner child's desires and share this poem. I wrote it in high school. Yeah. This is called She Tells Me, in parentheses, perspective of the mind. I've been listening to my body a lot lately, and she complains there's nowhere left to hide. Though we try to cover all of our soft spots, forcing a smile doesn't always feign refuge, and skin doesn't always provide protection. Curving for coverage can look a lot like an invitation. And every day she is reminded of this. Everywhere her blood is on the walls, dripping on the floor, staining her world red. Large, wise hands crumble her as they create bruises in every area on her body. Curving for coverage can look a lot like an invitation. Rejuvenated skin, after picking all the thorns, can look a lot like vulnerability. She's preparing for her next attack. There is nowhere left to hide, and hiding is where most demons lie. And she is reminded of this. Her dreams she can't remember, but she wakes, and her heart flows out of her chest. And she is kicking and she is screaming. Not the abusers, but the memories. What is she without pain? She wonders. So she comes to me, my body, and she complains there is nowhere left to hide. Because the memories fill every crevice of her mind. Because I can't help that her actions are manifestations of her externally inflicted perversity. I can't help that pain is the very essence of her being, her being. She knows she is without, if not for the memories. The blood on the wall, large, wise hands, the hurt of a million years ago, waiting. Also, I apologize because that actually came with a trigger warning and I didn't think about it.
It's okay. You missed a lot of trigger warnings. Towards the end, we got little lax with the trigger warnings. It's fine. Anyone else? Now we'll just stand here, looking at all of you. I feel like you're done. Jack, are you on the edge of your seat to go or to read something else? You're just vibing, and we're gonna call it a night. Thank you, everyone. See you next semester. Oh my God. If you're all interested in hosting the Speakeasy, come talk to me after the Speakeasy.